You can do that. You can do that intro again.
Oh yeah, cool. So welcome to episode 1 of the Metaforecast. Yes, the branding is strong, and I've got some sick guests today. And if you're watching me, then it's my podcast. But if you're watching Haroon, then it's
episode 1 of season 2 of Speak Easy with Haroon, where we have conversations with artists, creatives, and troublemakers.
Why are you looking at me?
He's looking at you. It was aimed at me.
We've got a couple troublemakers for sure. Like,
Self-explanatory, George.
Yeah, I'd take that.
No, the only reason is because I just can't pivot my neck while looking at the mic to actually look at Jody.
We just need to get you a mirror right here, don't we? Just so
I can just look at Jody.
Oh, you can get the one that they stole from downstairs in the toilet, maybe just somewhere, probably. That's bad.
Inside joke that no one listening knows about.
If you've been to Pirate Studios, you know what it's about.
And first, I'd like to introduce you to one of the guests today. It's George Lawrence. George Lawrence is a poet, a writer, a performer. He runs an event called Word of Mouth over in Peckham at the CLF Art Lounge, which is, one of the best nights out here in London. He's also a filmmaker, a director, and a videographer. Basically, a disgustingly talented individual, and also an all-round nice bloke.
I appreciate that. Damn, man.
Yeah, damn.
I felt a little bit emotional in that one. So I get to introduce you. I love it.
I don't know what you're going to say, but anyway.
Nah, here on the podcast, we actually have one of the pillars of the spoken word community, the Metaforecast. Like, if you don't know who that name is, you've not been in the poetry industry for that long, and you will come about this guy, because this guy is absolutely incredible. He's the epitome of document everything and do it with a little bit of swagger.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Nah, because one of the most generous creatives in the poetry scene at the moment, I reckon. And I've never seen anyone so hardworking as well. So big up.
Thank you, man. That means a lot, man. Especially coming from you, man. That's crazy.
Nah, how about you?
This is sick because I get to introduce also Jody to the Metaforecast. This guy, you might have to, like, if he does a certain piece, you might have to like tell your girlfriend, like, don't give him your number. But he's also an amazing performer and incredible playwright, and penning down some really cool like poetry pieces, which if you are on the other side of 2023, you're gonna probably see in a few months or have already seen. We've got Jody with a big Y, small J. Did I do that right? Is that good?
He was referring to, I spell my name lowercase J-O-D, uppercase Y, for multiple reasons, which I probably will get into later, maybe. But enough about me. To the person to my right, so many words come to mind, but to put it so simply, Haroon is one of the most fascinating individuals I've ever met in my life. We get along on both an academic and creative level, on a personal level. We're both autistic brothers in arms. I have mild Asperger's. He has straight Asperger's, is it?
So they don't actually give Asperger's diagnosis out.
Not anymore.
No, it's just autism, but
Okay.
likely Asperger's.
So yes.
And have ADHD as well.
ADHD and Asperger's. He's not only a poet, he's also a beat maker, he's a DJ, he's a writer, he's an incredible father, and just all around just a top class man. And I'm very happy to have crossed paths with him. And yeah, we're on a journey together, all of us. And I'm looking forward to where it takes us.
Amen.
Love you, Haroon.
Love you too,
Nessa.
bro.
Love you, George.
Love you guys.
Love you guys, man.
So are we going with these questions, or are you going to start with your conversation?
Just start a little conversation. Like,
Okay,
what
cool.
we've been up to today and just like what's been going on.
Yeah, I think it'd be quite cool to talk about the snow, because obviously that's something people will remember.
Bloody snow.
Yeah.
So yeah, how did you guys get gay? Was it right? What was your journey like?
Man, I love the snow, man. I was outside like last night just having a snowball fight, man. Like, because because like the whole thing, like, I hate cold weather without snow. It's just like, what's the point in having cold?
I'm completely with you. If you're going to have to endure the cold,
Make
I
it
want
fun.
snow. I want snowball fights.
because everything's brighter as well when you got all fucking a blanket of snow everywhere. So you don't feel as that grey depression, and it basically makes London actually look good in the winter.
I mean, it's magical. Like,
Yeah,
I remember
yeah.
looking out the window last night. I felt like I was actually living in a snow globe.
What makes me so happy is when I see families making snowmen. That's a really
Very
beautiful
wholesome.
sight. That's really wholesome.
You shouldn't see with the snowman that my mate made earlier. I saw it on
I don't-
Instagram.
I don't want to know. I don't think.
Nah, it's dodgy. There's that kind of thing. And I'm just like, you did this in a public area, man. Like,
What, did he strategically put a carrot somewhere?
I don't know whether he did it. I just saw a story and I just assumed it was him because I know his sense of humor. So like, he created a snowman on a bench, like sat down on a bench, and then obviously like instead of a carrot, an actual snow penis.
This wasn't me, was it?
I was debating that
Yeah.
actually. I think you guys will get on though.
Nice.
Yeah.
Was he generous with the snowman's equipment?
I think it was average.
Oh wow,
Yeah,
okay.
it was average. Yeah.
It's like, cool. Like,
We were supposed to be just talking about the weather as a segue
Yeah,
into the chat, and we've already entered. Yeah.
You said you wanted it to be conversation, was leading
Yeah,
to a
nah,
conversation.
Legit, like
yeah.
no more than 2 minutes ago, we was talking about being professional, and that's the first thing that comes out your mouth.
No, it was the
Dis-
second.
You always have to have the last word.
Yeah. But yeah, the snow, man. It's always interesting when the snow comes in. I hate it when there's ice on the street.
Mm.
I hate that,
risky.
and because I'm always scared of like a really pretty girl walking by, and then I just slip and bust my ass. I'm like,
She might come and help you though. And
I
that might
very
be,
much
that might
doubt
be an
that.
icebreaker.
Oh, damn.
boss.
That's what you should say to the woman if you see her. Yeah, if that happens.
Sorry, I fell for you. That
Mm.
kind of thing. We're poets. It just kind of happens, isn't it? Do you ever feel like that's what
That's
happens?
actually in a poem of his, believe it
Yeah.
or not.
That's the intro to a poem of his.
Yeah, that poem went off. on that night.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very popular poem by you, by the way. Like that's
Yeah, I loved it when you did it word of mouth, man. It's just because it was so unpredictable. Like, because you said it to me beforehand that you were going to do it.
Mm.
And just to get Jamie's reaction, because he was just so like, oh, what is it? And he didn't know whether it was slapstick or true. But then the moment when you just incorporate that into the host, and then he just turned around and just like, oh, he's only going to fucking want it. That's what Jamie said. He's only going to fucking want it. And then just how I just love how you don't use the microphone. And I remember like, because I had my cousin
Cyber
there
trend.
at that time, at that night. And she just turned around and said she absolutely loved your poem. Like,
Oh, really?
Yeah, she's just like, because she just said it was just something different in a way. And it's the fact that it's what I love about that poem is that you're willing to fail.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
I love failing, falling
Yeah.
flat on my face, because you
Literally,
have to get
yeah.
up. And, like, you have to get up, and that's the best way to live life, getting up and keep going.
Yeah, and it throws away all expectations as well.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's why I love that poem. I think it's really, because it's the love is poem, isn't it?
Yeah, love it.
Yeah.
Thank
I
you,
mean,
man.
I don't know if you, because obviously you're filming as well, but anyone that's filming Jody is like a hell.
Yeah,
It's
I
like
apologize.
because I'm like,
Sorry.
oh shit, I'd have to stay on the tripod, or is it handheld?
No, I just
No
keep
mistake.
everything wired so I can fit his
Aye.
ego in as well. Just,
I don't have an ego, man. I don't have an ego.
No, but I mean, that's an interesting observation of
Yeah.
yours. Like, as someone who films performers and events, because you put content out and you're here to sort of, give a platform to poets and artists. And like one of the things that you've said, and I think you've said it even sometimes with me as well, with performing, those performers who sort of move around the stage a lot make your life a lot harder. And I think with Jody, and to some extent with myself, a lot of that use of the space and using your body within the performance, a lot of that comes from theatre.
Mm.
If you want to
Yeah.
actually expand on that a bit more, Jody.
So before I was taking poetry or performance poetry a lot seriously, I was just straight acting. I started off just doing like youth theatre and then going to college and then auditioning for drama schools. I got to the final round for a couple of the big ones. I won't mention because I don't want to boost my ego. But yeah, I was straight acting, and then I loved it. I love theatre. I love films. From the work of Burkhoff to French theatre practitioner Antoine Artaud.
is he the guy that did Theatre of Cruelty?
Theatre, yes,
Yeah.
you know your theatre. Yeah,
Yeah.
Theatre of Cruelty. Yeah,
I
great
love
work.
his work, man. It's
Great
just,
work. Bit of a
it's a bit over the top in
Bit over
terms
the
of some of the
top.
stuff that he did, because the thing is he wanted to activate senses as
Yes.
well. And there was one incident where we would throw raw sewage onto the fucking stage
Mhm.
in order for people, which quite frankly, it's more like 5D cinema now, which
Yeah.
this is how ahead of the time he actually was in terms of like deconstructing theatre in a way which basically people can feel uncomfortable, really.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't about them feeling good, it was
No,
about
it was about
uncomfortability.
it was like throwing you that this is what life is actually like. We're not going to hide anything, which I really it's the bluntness of it, which I really respect.
Can I ask about Berkoff? Did you do Metamorphosis?
Funny you say that. So the last production in college was Metamorphosis, and I played Gregor Samsa, and that was
Nice.
the most out of body experience. For those of you who don't know, the Metamorphosis, I have trouble with the word. It's a story about a young man named Gregor Samsa who is the sole and provider for his family. They don't do anything for him. He works long ass hours, and just one night he turns into a beetle.
Oh wow.
And it's a metaphor for him going insane, and it was a really out of body experience because I had to really do a lot of stretches to get flexibility because I was crawling around the stage and I was doing things that was just you wouldn't normally see in theatre, and that's what birthed in my performance poetry, where I like to not just use the stage, I like to use everything, because it comes from what Shakespeare says, all the world's a stage. I take that quite literally in my work. Yeah, and that's where I kind of birthed theatre for me. That was and then I went through some issues with mental health, and then I started writing as just therapy. I really liked rhyming words, and I thought, how can I take rhyming words and then fuse it with acting, two things I love? And then I thought, performance poetry.
But the use of rhyming words, is that an influence from like hip hop?
Yeah, most definitely. Like big. I wouldn't
Was
call
that a pun?
Pardon?
Was that a pun? Most definitely.
Oh, big pun. That's a big pun. Hip hop heads in the building.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm a big hip hop head, but I do love my rap, my artist, the wordplay, just how certain rappers can construct sentences and take words and then break it down and then speed it up. Just everything about that. What really got me into I wouldn't say rapping, but writing, the craftsmanship of writing, is Eminem, but it's the Marshall Mathers LP2, and on the song called Baby, he rhymes king of the with literature. So he says, I'm the motherfucking king of the motherfucking English literature. And just that, the way he just bend it and speeded it up, I was like, whoa, this is new, and I really wanted to like try and imitate that in some way, shape or form.
Because it is mad what you can do with cadences when you think about Eminem, like, because I think because massive inspiration for most people, any lyricist, whether you're a poet or not a lyricist, like the way he can bend the words, it basically makes you look at words in a different way.
Yeah, you can't deny his talent.
Yeah, for sure.
No, you can't deny his talent, but I would strongly, as someone who is a massive hip hop head, and I've been listening to hip hop for decades, what I would contest is, the assertion you made about, it hadn't been done before. Lots of MCs were bending words.
Yeah, for sure.
Everything. I think with Eminem,
it's that he brought into the mainstream.
Yeah. I mean, he was a mainstream success. So, that style of like, actually there's a lot more you can do. Not just the most obvious rhyming words, but actually, doing a lot of the internal rhymes and, similar vowel sounds.
Yeah, Rakim.
Yeah,
Rakim.
I mean, Rakim, yeah.
But then,
Big Daddy Kane.
But then again, you got to think about, like, there was quite a lot of them before Eminem blew up. It was him and Cannabis, who were very similar in terms of their style, in terms of their rhyming schemes, and there was that huge competition between them two.
Yeah.
And it's not a competition.
Not now.
I mean,
but at
Eminem
the
was
time,
so much better.
Yeah.
I don't know, because I remember the first Cannabis album, there was all that hype because he went after LL Cool J.
And then KRS.
And LL, he came out with Mama Said Knock You Out.
No. Mama Said Knock You Out was against Kool Moe Dee. And he ended Kool Moe Dee's career with that tune.
It was the first diss track, wasn't it?
No. There have been diss tracks for ages. Like, even before that, you had stuff going on.
Right, it was one of the first big ones, along with No Vaseline by Ice Cube. It was up there. It was of that same stature.
Yeah. No, it's up there.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that, I mean, that stuff was going on sort of...
left, right, and centre.
No, not right. Just within hip hop, the stuff had been happening sort of even in the early 80s. You had stuff going on between, the Juice Crew, like MC Shan and all of them, and KRS-One and Boogie Down Productions. So, it dates back, but those were some of the sort of really famous ones and ones that had serious consequences for people's careers.
Yeah.
Because didn't that Mama Say I Knock You Out was more like him trying to basically make a comeback because, like, with LL Cool J, because he was like slipping off, and that was the album that basically not changed his life, but it kind of made him more relevant at the time. Because he was losing the street credibility, and as soon as he did that, it was just insane. Because he ended up the story is that he ended up talking to his grandmother, and she said, "Just fucking do it, just knock him out, like just do what you do." And she gave him the courage, and then he ended up making this record basically straight afterwards.
Yeah, I mean the thing is LL Cool J's always been really versatile. Like he was, like at a time when no one was doing this, he did that song "I Need Love." Like he did a rap ballad, and there would be people over the years and decades who'd say he's soft and he's lost his edge. Like, Cannabis did that rhyme, right? Like 99% of your fans wear high heels. But the thing is never rule out LL Cool J because he'll out rhyme most people out there.
Facts. And the thing is, you can argue he was like the original Drake in a way, especially with his label.
R&B.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, he was, because the moment when it came to the 2000s, like Ja Rule was good, man. But the thing is, Ja Rule was good, but he needed the female harmonies to basically turn it into that R&B record. And to be honest, I love Ja Rule, but he does sound like Tupac. I'm sorry, I'm not gonna lie, but he does.
There was that time when people used to say Ja Rule and DMX because they had like a huskier type.
Ja Rule was.
Yeah.
I strongly feel like he was biting Tupac's voice.
Yeah. Because
definitely
DMX was
style.
so unique. You can,
Yeah.
if you put a DMX record on and a Tupac record on, you'll see the differences. But with Ja Rule and fucking Tupac, you'll see the similarities in a way.
Especially in The Pledge when it kind of has like a Tupac vibe, and I think there's a Tupac voice like sample or soundbite, and it's just there at the end and Tupac's talking or something.
But again, those things are very, very conscious. Like I remember listening to a bootleg record back in the 90s that had Ja Rule and Jay-Z on it, and Ja Rule was out rapping Jay-Z in double time on the record.
Shit.
Like that's a very rare thing.
Veni Veti Vessi is probably Ja Rule's best album, I think. And then obviously it became more pop.
I mean, I definitely agree that that's his best album, but my favourite album has to be The Last Temptation because it was the first rap record I ever bought.
I got that on CD. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was talking about The Pledge one. I mean, it also has a lot of Tupac imagery in it. If you look at the two crosses on his back.
Yeah, because it's very Machiavellian in a way, in terms of like what Tupac was doing later on in his career with like Machiavelli, but like it is very similar. I mean, he did bite his style, but he did make some good songs, man. Come on, I'm Real is a great song. Fucking Always on Time in terms of R&B ballads, like
Always on Time's
Always on Time's
a banger.
Be
it is a banger, like
yeah. And like even just him, like even the tune with him and Bobby
Brown.
Yeah. It's the last temptation.
We're back.
And then he comes in with a helicopter in the video. I don't know if you've seen the video.
I haven't actually.
Yeah, man. It's like him and Bobby, and they were two women. And then, when are you two gonna make a song? And then they just look at each other, and then a helicopter comes into shot. I'm like, that's fucking mad. Like,
what song was that? That was
Thug Lovin'.
Thug Lovin'. That's a good song actually.
You're getting bored. We're gonna get it was copyright strike. But,
I mean, what was we meant to be to talk about poetry? We just
so we were supposed to we haven't even got to how Haroon got here in the snow. You know.
Me, with a few delays, which is sort of predictable. Like what it's like in England. You get a little bit of snow. Public transport just goes completely haywire. But no, luckily, road I live on, clear, so there were no sort of issues of sliding around in the ice. Drove to the station, took a tube here, and to be honest, my soundtrack for coming here was the new little Simz album, No Thank You, which is... I mean, she's done it again. she's just made, an undeniable piece of work. Inflow has done all of the production, her producing partner. Her like anyone. I mean, not that anyone would be daft enough to doubt her emceeing skills, but like she's just the emceeing is another level. Her pen is even sharper. The music sort of strikes this balance of being, I think, a bit more sparse than the last album that was quite elaborate musically, but there's still a musicality. Like there's lush strings and there's arrangements. You know, I heard like a break that I haven't heard for a while. I think the last time I heard that break, there was a break that they sampled, that Jurassic 5 sampled on Concrete Schoolyard.
That's a good song.
Which is a great song. So yeah, my journey here, it's like many journeys. It was soundtracked by hip hop.
Nice.
That's actually cool.
I got that song in my head now. Let's take it back to the concrete streets. Original beats with that.
I was just gonna say, like, it brought up a memory. Like, so I used to. Do you remember when they used to put grime at the Albert Hall and it was like orchestrated? So you had an orchestra and it was just grime or UK hip hop on it. And Lil Simz was in the lineup and Kano was in there, and I think Lethal B was, and everyone came out, Kano, everyone, and they had the biggest cheers. And Lil Simz was relatively unknown, but she was kind of blown up in the States before the UK, and she came out, and like the reception was obviously not as great as that someone like Kano would get, and I was just like, this is mad. But obviously now she's blown up and everyone knows her name. So,
but it's interesting what you're saying with Little Simz. I wouldn't say she blew up in America, but she definitely got noticed in America
before here,
a little bit earlier than here, like certain indie radio shows and so forth, and podcasts and YouTube shows sort of had her on as a guest. And she was like, you know, she's done now 2 NPR Tiny Desks, but she did one sometime before Sometimes I Might Be Introvert, back when she wasn't as well known. And like, I mean, both sets are just incredible, and I've been lucky enough to see her live a couple of times in person, and yeah, just an incredible artist.
She is quite the definition of real G's move silent, because when everyone's always talking about like, oh, like why hasn't this person got success internationally, why hasn't that person got success? She's done it, but she's done it on her own terms, under the radar, and that's, you have to respect that grind.
But it's also to do America first. You know how hard it is for a British artist to basically like make America know you first. It's like the reverse Jimi Hendrix. You know, Jimi Hendrix had to come over to the UK before he became famous in America. And like Lil Simz did exactly the same thing in a way, where it was just that kind of popularity, that indie buzz, which gave it that added credibility. Because the problem is, you know, with us, like as British people, I feel like we're just like, oh my God, how come we not represent our own? Why is America taking that credibility in a way?
But it happens. I
Yeah,
mean,
which is good.
No, but it's the inverse. Like if you look at people like Quentin Tarantino, Spike Lee, you know, they had to come to Europe, and it was always England within Europe that was like the place that would champion certain types of artists. I think just sometimes, as cliched as it sounds, there's the old saying, right? You know, if you're a prophet, you have to leave your town, you know, to develop the following before you can come back home.
I mean, it's true. It's the same thing happened with like jazz artists in the 50s and 60s when they came over to France, you know, like Miles Davis or like Cannibal Adderley, who basically felt, not only did it influence their music when they went back to America, they actually felt welcomed a lot more in Europe because they were seen as being artists. So there's also that kind of thing where you, like you said, like, that's such a good quote actually. Say that again. If
you're a prophet, you're going to have to leave your town if you want to develop a following. Like a prophet always ends up having to leave their town in order to be taken seriously and believed. Can I ask a question to you two, then, all three of you actually, with that as like a note? Because I remember having a conversation with you guys recently about like, with poetry going outside of London to basically gain recognition or gain new audiences or new perspectives. Like, how has that been going from you guys? And could you tell me a little bit more about that? So, like, me and Jody have sort of teamed up and we've gone outside of London. I think it's a difficult one. I think poetry's a little bit different. Yeah. To, you know, like, I think if we were in a band or a group and we were actually going outside of London, you build and develop a following. But I think what we found is that when you go outside of London, poetry's got this little quirk to it where a particular town, it will have its events, it has its clique, and, you know, its people. So I think generally as an artist, getting outside of your town is good and it works. I think as a poet, you know, performing on open mics and stuff, it's difficult to jump on at other places because just generally, you know, with poetry, the majority of people in a crowd are people who just want to jump on the open mic. You know, it's not the same. Like if you go to a gig and a band, a set of musicians are playing, I'd say even, rappers, people are there to see the thing. So I think it's a little bit different as poets, but I think generally as artists, it is important to understand that the world is bigger than whatever town or place that you're in, and find ways to try and get your work out. But again, how that operates right now in a world where, I don't know, there's a lot more travel restrictions, visa restrictions, like post-Brexit, it's harder to just...
Get up and go.
Yeah, it is. I mean, so I don't know what the answer is there. Like, in principle, yes. But, again, it depends on what your creative practice is. And also, I think it just depends on, where you want to go and how you want to sort of do. Yeah, it depends on where you want to go. Like, I remember pre-pandemic and pre-Brexit, certain artists that I knew, like Ty, the hip-hop artist from Brixton, you just jump on a Eurostar, go to Amsterdam, jump on a cheap flight, end up somewhere in Germany, but Berlin, Frankfurt, anywhere, and you sort of link up with artists.
Because Berlin has a huge hip hop scene in Berlin.
Yeah.
There's a huge hip hop scene, like scene in Berlin, which makes it interconnected in a way that you were saying. Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's important for people to go out and sort of do things, but I think in an era where, like it's impossible to get over to somewhere like Taiwan, they're still very much shut down due to COVID. I don't know what the answer is in the context of where we're at in the world with the current kind of geopolitical situation of how COVID has impacted things, and just post-Brexit, where I just think travel is harder because I've not been able to get out, even though I would like to.
I mean, it's a good thing in terms of what you were saying when it comes down to like going to open mics outside of London, and then obviously they have their embedded community, so you're trying to basically shine amongst that community. But then what if you're just a passenger, you go there and then go to another place, so you don't really embed yourself into that community, so you don't get a opportunity to have the same connections. Because just going from like, I can imagine like going to one gig, it'd be nice if you could go there quite a few times in order to build them connections. The same sense of how the London scene works when you like, do you want to do your metaphor, the dojo metaphor? Like,
oh yeah. So when you play Pokemon, and each poetry event is a gym, and you go into that town. So you start off in Pallet Town. You've got your own, you get a gym in the nearby town, right? So you got your poetry event, and you go there and you do your thing. You kind of develop your skills as a poet, and then you start going and venturing out into other poetry events, and then you kind of earn your badge and earn your stripes there, and then see what other types of poets are there, what other types of topics they're touching on, and then that informs almost like where you lie on the spectrum of things you're doing or content you're touching on, and then you might even incorporate more things into your repertoire. I kind of love just going to different platforms. So after BYOB, which is where I kind of like got my stripes and then my video credentials, I started going to Mind Over Matter. Then I saw George's thing and I was like, this is the next level. Like this guy had like a 2-camera setup, and like obviously he had like proper cameras, like I'm just using my phone.
I have to credit Harry with that, man.
Yeah,
like it's not just me.
Harry. I had to see what George's setup was like. So obviously like going to another gym and just like trying to get my gym badge there, like, okay, how are they doing it different here? And obviously you had like, and you have an amazing host in Jamie.
Jamie and Jamal. Yeah.
Jamal, yeah.
Both of them amazing.
Amazing. And they got so much charisma and just personality. It's just a whole different vibe. It's almost like you've bought tickets to a show, and it's not an open mic. It's just entertainment. So yeah, kind of like my Pokemon. I hope I did it justice.
No, it definitely is. But yeah. I love how you touched upon that, because that didn't happen overnight for us. Like, I think that's the thing about nights anyway, from the promoter's point of view, is that because obviously you want to step into that realm of like, obviously you run events now and then you want to build up that setup, but that took us ages to get to that level, man. It really did. You know, we had to go through nights where there was only 8 people sitting in the crowd and still putting on a show, you know, and I was hosting it. Didn't like hosting it, so, and then we had the 2 cameras, thank God for Harry, and then with my extra camera, and then having the photographer. But that was just slowly building up the right connections, the right network. And getting the venue that we got was only because of an event that we did just before the pandemic, and there was a promoter that just so happened to be a friend of a friend, basically. But yeah, it's a mad thing in terms of what you're thinking about, like the dojos of like. It's good to know where you want to go with your stuff. Then you want to kind of you want to elevate it to the point of like the filmmaking side of it, I'm guessing.
Yeah, essentially, I'm actually excited because this week I'm dropping a trailer, Haroon's Scratch Night at Poema Nouveau at a cause event flat.
Wait, let's give them some context.
Yeah.
So like Poema Nouveau, it's a little offshoot project run by a poet called Akor, and Akor is one of the founding members of BYOB, Bring Your Own Bars, which basically himself and Abdullah, aka Soft Spoken Poet.
Shout out to them too.
Shout out to them too.
Legends.
Big one.
That poetry night, basically, so it's an offshoot of that. And Poema Nouveau, instead of it being like an open mic or anything like that, it's in an intimate, private location. Akor curates 3 poets, and basically you bring material that you haven't shared, and it's almost like you're workshopping it there, like a scratch night. So literally, you know, you've got your notepad or, you know, your iPad, your phone or whatever, and you read your piece. You know, you take multiple pieces there, and after you read each one, the floor is basically open to a very small handful of people in the room who just ask questions like, what was your motivation for that? You know, why you make that choice? Or you don't think you could maybe do that? And it allows you to sort of, I guess, gauge what a reaction to the poem might be, and test it before you might want to. I mean, for me, I'm working on my first poetry book, and so that performance was a great place for me to take certain material that I definitely want to use in the book. And to be honest, the majority of what I used on that night, I ended up using for my very first headline at BYOB several months later. So it's a really useful one. But yeah, maybe Metaforecast was the videographer on the night, and it was just a very different style in terms of how he shot it and how he edited it compared to a lot of the videos that he's a lot more well known for. But I think that's something I've been witnessing with Metaforecast's work, is that I think now that he's kind of built that foundation, you know, as a videographer in terms of understanding camera angles, sound and editing, you know, he's been sort of pushing himself out of his comfort zone and trying new and different things. Like, for example, you also directed a music video for Kage, which we need to talk more about.
Yeah, definitely. So with Kage's one, that was actually fun. So we shot from like, I want to say 10 or 11. And you know, poets move on poet time. But,
timekeeping is non-existent.
Yeah. So obviously most of the poets couldn't come at the same time, so we had to like stagger some of the scenes. So most of the scenes
10 to 11 isn't 10 in the morning to 11 at night, or
no. We came 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning, and then we finished around just after 6 or before 7, maybe even more, because it was really sunny. It was like summer, so you didn't feel like it was the evening. But so most of the scenes in the video near the end were shot at the beginning, and everything at the beginning of the video was shot near the end of the day. So it's kind of mad how it doesn't really translate in the video, but it was kind of crazy. So Lay had to leave before 2 or around 2 for work, and then Suavi came in after work around 6 or 5 in the afternoon. So yeah, just trying to film, and then also figure out how am I going to film which scene, and then everyone just happened to just make it work. That
Can
was
I
amazing.
ask that, as a filmmaker, how did you, because did you do it on your own then, all the technical side of it on your own?
Yeah, essentially. So I hired the A7, and then I bought the Ronin SC2. I don't know if you got one. So obviously it's kind of heavy,
Mm.
and also the A7 is not
Did
a
you
light
have,
camera.
You have forearms that pop out by the next day. I'm
Yeah,
guessing.
like I was like Mac Champ, like I had to grow another 2 arms. Pokemon reference again. And literally, like I think the day after, like my elbow, I think you knew, like my elbow was mad that week as well. So I was just holding this heavy camera for like 6 hours straight filming, and then the next day, the whole week I just couldn't use my arm. I couldn't bend my elbow. It was crazy. It was that heavy. Yeah, it was like my first real like proper like music video. I mean, apart from shooting freestyle videos for myself, like shooting for other people is a lot different, especially when you've got clients, right? You got to balance like their expectations and then what is manageable and what is practical.
I mean, that's what I think is really hard for like modern day videographers these days, because not only do you have to be the sound man, you have to be the DOP,
Yeah, for sure.
you have to be the production manager, you have to be the first AD as well as the director.
Yeah,
And at the same time, you don't have the alleviation of space where you can actually, you also have to integrate with the people so you can get the best out of the people. Which is, when you think about it,
You're learning
it's
to
fucking
direct.
insane.
Yeah.
Like, it's fucking insane to have to manage all
But
of this mindset.
it must be exhausting.
Mm.
Like
It is,
both
yeah.
physically and mentally, to have to sort of juggle, like you said. I mean, I haven't worked really on film sets, but I know some of the roles and stuff, and I think when you just rolled off that list of like all the different hats, it's the first time I actually thought about it and thought, damn, like, if you're like an independent director, videographer, like, like you guys, you basically have to roll up your sleeves and do all of those things.
Because you touched upon something which was really interesting in terms of like the scheduling, because that's the job of a first AD. I've been a first AD for quite a few music videos, and really enough, I enjoy it because it is the organization, and then understanding what the shots are and what people are available at particular times, and then speaking to the director and just being like, listen, you only got a certain amount of time for this shot. Do you want to do this shot? And then when you work with a good director,
That's a first AD.
Yeah.
So this is the thing. I remember being a producer on one music video, it was quite a big, like it was a 2-day shoot. One day we did inside of WeWork in Waterloo, and then the second day we basically did that first day, the first half of the shoot was in WeWork in Waterloo, and then during the evening we went and shot in the basement of a car park in Peckham, and then day 2 we were in Liverpool Street for the majority of it, and then because the rapper didn't turn up to the shoot in Liverpool Street.
Wow.
That happened to me
Ouch.
before. That's happened to me.
What that is his video or their video?
No, they were the guest MC.
Oh, okay.
And then being, whether you want to call it a producer, first AD, basically my job was to free up the director to let him be creative. So I looked after all of the logistics. In fact, it was snowing on that day like it was today. And it got so mad that I actually had to physically go pick up people and drive them for the shoot because of the lack of public transport on the day.
So you turned into a runner, a first AD, and a producer. All within
No,
this
because
time.
I called up the director
Wow.
that morning, and I was like, "Look out of your window." He looked out and he's like, "Oh, so what are we gonna do?" And I was like, "That's not even a question. We're shooting. It's not about what
Yeah,
we're
you
gonna do.
have to,
It's
yeah.
how we're gonna do it." But no, I remember in the rapper, he just said, "Yeah, I'm just not coming." And I had to figure out where he was, and then I basically ended up taking the director and the rapper and drove them to West London to do the final set of shots.
Who was the rapper?
All the names have been changed.
Okay.
I was gonna ask that as well. I was like, who's this rapper?
I'm not even saying whose music video it was because that would give away who the rapper was.
Did you have to
'cause
sign
it's
an
the guest rapper.
NDA? Like,
I didn't, but I've imposed an NDA on myself.
Is it a well-known name that we would all know?
Dude,
of?
stop pushing
Okay,
on
cool.
boundaries,
Alright,
man.
well, I'm
Absolutely
shut up.
crying.
Be quiet.
that's
But
crazy.
something similar happened to me when I directed a music video just before the pandemic with this really cool rapper. Like, we're actually really good friends now, but the guy rocked up 4 hours fucking late for the shoot.
That's standard.
Yeah, no,
Is
but
that what for poet
nah,
time, maybe?
I planned the fuck out of the shoot, man. Like, I had all the shot lists, you know, I had my crew there as well. And the thing is, I asked a couple of other people to come just for extra hands. So the thing is, for me, it looks bad. You know, it shows like it shows the disrespect as well. Because I get it, like rap lifestyle, you know, and then, you know, halfway through the shoot, he was drinking Hennessy, like smoking joints and stuff. But it was part of the whole thing. But then I ended up saying to him when he got there, I said, listen, everything we planned, I'm going to have to get rid of now. You know, I'm 3 hours behind, so I'm going to have to get rid of some of the good stuff that I wanted to shoot. And just be honest about that.
But this is something I wanted to touch upon, because I think, and we'll get a bit more into the next level of it and touch upon that. But I think, you know, a lot of us here, beyond being artists, we're sort of working creatives in the daytime as our day jobs. Because, you know, you have to support yourself some way. And we've sort of found commercial applications for our creative skill sets. And a lot of, I feel, what you have to do as a freelancer is you're sort of bringing resources together and being as being really kind of creative and resourceful to make projects happen. And I was recently in an instance where, helping a client, you know, I brought in a particular resource, like someone, you know, I was writing the copy for their new website, but then I brought in a web developer and designer to sort out their new site. And in the end, the person just completely flaked. And it's definitely made me look bad. I'm definitely probably not going to go back to that person for some of my own work or refer other work to them. Like, how do you handle those situations? Like, what are the feelings that run through you, like an instance like that, where you've actually really brought everything together and someone's, you know, do you feel that sometimes, okay, I know how I feel that within the creative space, sometimes there's a lot of lack of professionalism, whether it's so-called artists. Yes, I use the word so-called because I'm going to cast aspersions on what they're doing, or whether it's even in, you know, the commercial space, you know, where we do stuff for sort of paying clients. I feel like, you know, not everyone is stepping to the task with the same understanding of like the need for professionalism. What's your take on that, and like what kind of how do you navigate the emotions when you're dealing with that sort of thing?
When I think about it from my own perspective, is I've been the person that flaked as well, so I have a lot of empathy at the same time. Like, so for me, when it came down to that situation, yeah, you're going to be annoyed and, you know, you're going to be frustrated. Firstly, you're going to be absolutely frustrated. And it's how you repair that relationship afterwards, you know, even from being the person that's been flaked on and the person that's flaked as well. It's how you manage the relationship afterwards and what ends up happening and whether there's a common understanding of that disrespect in a way. That's the main thing, because the thing is, even with filmmaking, like, shit hits the fan all the time with filmmaking. You know, there's some stuff that ends up happening that you kind of have to think on the spot. And everything, because the thing is, when you throw a lot of expectations into the aspect of creativity, like, some of that shit is not going to happen. And then if you throw too much expectations into it, you're going to be left disappointed as well. But in terms of the aspect of professionalism, it really depends on working with people to understand and navigate what their energy is. Because sometimes when some people flake, it could be their own insecurity. It could be the lack of self-confidence. But then they have to build that relationship up again. And they have to basically make sure that there is that kind of mutual understanding, because it is frustrating when it does happen, you know, because there's the ideal world of professionalism, which a lot of us want to aspire to anyway. You know, with that shoot, there was a lot of stuff I really wanted to get out of it. Same with the shoot I did with London Fashion Week, which the original.
I love that. I watched that as well.
Oh, don't even get me started on that, man. That was
during COVID, right? And you had to film it a certain way.
Yeah, no, but the difficulty with that shoot. So I did a video for Emilio De Morena, who was part of the Vogue show for London Fashion Week in, I think, 2021 or 2020, I can't remember. And we planned this amazing shoot where there was going to be like a crew of 15 people in this sphere. We had dancers, 5 dancers. We had like the whole art direction and stuff. Me and my partner were directing it. And basically, we were being COVID safe. We actually had like proper like COVID rules. We actually put people into certain sections. Like, it was methodically planned in a way which is just
mask distancing,
everything was so well planned. And I was just, because we had such an amazing crew, like we had 2 like first ADs who were fucking phenomenal. We also had like a great DOP who had their own camera crew, so everyone had to bubble with each other in a way, and then the dancers had to be there, and then suddenly the DOP ends up getting COVID and finds out the day before the shoot, and I'm in the same house, and so is my partner, and I was fucking livid. I was so fucking pissed off. You know, me and her had a huge argument. Like, I ended up walking to the river and then suddenly getting this like epiphany moment where like my friend who agreed to do it just because he wanted to be part of the shoot, he agreed to be like a art direction assistant, but he also has experience in directing. So I had this light bulb moment. I was just like, he can do it. We can promote direct it. We can make all the shit happen. And I was just afterwards like, I ended up having to call everyone up that evening. I was on the phone for 4 fucking hours trying to convince everyone and speaking to like, you know, the fucking designer, saying, no, it's all going ahead, lying to him because I haven't even agreed with the camera crew whether they wanted to do so. So all of it was just a huge blag.
Yeah.
And so I agree with the designer, said, look, we're still going ahead with it without actually speaking to the camera crew, because I was going to call them afterwards because he was calling me up. So I had to manage so many different people's emotions. So by the time I get to the camera crew, convince them to do it because they wanted to work with me and my friends. And then the next day, the guy, my friend, he gets tuberculosis. So we had to cancel the shoot. So what you see online, which Meta is referring to,
It's also sick though still.
yeah, but I had to come up with that last minute. But this is the aspect of creativity. It's about like thinking on the spot. Sometimes you can't be that precious.
Problem solving.
That's the beauty of being a creative. I feel like pressure, it creates diamonds, as we know, and it's when an artist is under any type of pressure, that's when your greatest work can come out.
But this is something I wanted to ask because I struggle with it, and it's something I want to ask you because we've got similar challenges. We're both autistic, and that brings challenges with regulating your emotions, and there's almost these sort of conflicting tendencies because, you know, if you're autistic, you will tend to have some sort of creative bent, but at the same time, as you know, people, when you're autistic, there's a certain rigidity. Like if you now think, all right, I've set my mind, this is going to happen. And if it swerves outside of that, that can be quite hard to regulate and then adapt to. And yet, your lifeblood as an artist is your adaptability. So I want to hear a bit more from you as to how you handle that.
How I navigate through it.
How you navigate through managing your emotions, regulating yourself sort of emotionally so that you can basically get through to the other end and, you know, create a good piece of work, or you know, get through to the end of something that's collaborative with someone else if you're not working solo.
That's a good question.
I mean, I'm asking it because, unlike you, like, how old were you? How old are you now, and how old were you when you were diagnosed?
I'm 29 now. 29 now, and I was diagnosed, I believe, when I was 24 or 5, so it was quite late. But when I was a child, I was diagnosed with dyslexia or dyspraxia and dyscalculia. And then it wasn't until in my 20s when I went through some mental health issues, I went to see a therapist, and he actually said, oh, because you have these, it puts you onto the autistic spectrum, so you actually have Asperger's.
Yeah, no, because for me, I'm 41. I got diagnosed with both ADHD and autism off the back of each other when I was 39 in the pandemic.
Wow.
That's late.
So that's
you mentioned it was quite late for certain people.
Can I ask, how did that make you feel when you found out?
So the autism diagnosis, that was a very the assessment for it was very intense.
Mine killed me on the inside. Sorry to cut you off, but it was
reckonable. The autism diagnosis was, the actual assessment was very intense because it was still lockdown. It had to be done on Zoom. It was a 2-hour assessment. I did it at my friend's house, Sophia, to shout out Sophia Sheikh from Brixton, because she had noticed my autistic traits as early as when I was 19, 20, or 20 years of age. But I wasn't really paying attention to like anything she was saying to me. And I only really started noticing potential stuff around about 2018. And I think a lot of my life was starting to make sense. So in terms of that diagnosis, like I was told on the spot, like, look, we're going to have to write up your notes, but we don't need to process and interpret you unambiguously. You are autistic. Like we measure, I don't know, like 1, 2, 3 dimensions. You hit the mark on all of them. I spent most of that night in tears, just sobbing, because even now, it's a 15-page report. I've never been able to make my way past maybe page 1 or 2, just because the stuff is so triggering. Because so much of it is about challenges with communication, social challenges. But it felt like almost like a vindication, because I've gone through my life as someone who's very, very smart, but who's consistently underachieved. You know, like in a job, I'm not very good with social situations because I take things literally because I'm autistic. You know, again, the world of work is, it's very fluid in terms of how you follow rules in certain workplaces. Because I'm autistic, I just follow rules to the letter, which has meant that, it's either frustrated people who expect you to do things a certain way where that's not the official line, but the unofficial line is you just do it that way. Just because everything's very sort of binary, it just brought things into sharp focus. Whereas when I was diagnosed with ADHD, I think by the time I got to the diagnosis, it was a bit of an anticlimax because I think I'd already figured it out. But I think for me, autism was one of those ones where, it was just, I think, they both affect me quite severely in a lot of different ways. And they affect me even more now because I've had COVID a couple of times and I've got long COVID. And that sort of interacts with those two conditions, with ADHD and autism even more. But yeah, the autism that late in life, I think it helped me become more self-aware. So I think, since then, I don't really work in an office anymore. I work freelance remotely from home, so I get to control my environment and I get to work in my own patterns that are sort of work with as opposed to against ADHD. So for example, I'm not someone who can just sit at a desk for 8 hours straight. I work in very intense creative bursts. I also looked at retraining in a form of work that worked for me better. So as a sort of pandemic, I trained up as a copywriter. So that's not copyright law for all the people who keep misinterpreting it. It means that I write copy, or I write words for businesses, whether it's case studies, emails, blogs, white papers, websites, all the sort of writing in business. And that's been a better fit. So I didn't know how it was going to play out, but I was very emotional when I did get diagnosed with autism, because I knew that it was a really important piece of the puzzle in terms of understanding myself and just being able to forgive things that have happened in the past, because it always feels like it's a compliment when people say, but you're so smart. If I was as smart as you, I'd be a multi-millionaire, or I'd be somewhere. Like, how come you haven't done it? And people don't realize that that's like just paper cut after paper cut on your psyche and your self-esteem. So for me, that sort of segue talking about autism, that's why it's important to go into this question about autism and how you regulate your emotions in a creative context, because not everyone's had that blessing of being diagnosed like you and I do. The waiting lists are insane in this country.
The reason why I was so trigger warning for those listening, the reason why I was so quick to be diagnosed is because I was suicidal.
I've grappled with that since a young age, but I came from a culture where I didn't even talk to a doctor and acknowledge I had depressive tendencies until I was 35.
Oh, it's difficult.
And
that's
that was
a lot of weight on the shoulders.
Oh no, huge. But it was, that was the first time. Anyway, going back to what I was saying.
So where do you want me to start? Like my diagnosis, or like how I navigate through the work?
I think talk about how you navigate through work with that sort of challenge, and then as you can sort of dip in and out of the diagnosis and how it sort of.
I think for me, it always starts off as the same, the same way. Panic. I have a massive panic attack. Before, I used to have a panic attack to the sense of it being an emotional breakdown, and I'd be crying and I'd be scared out of my life that I wouldn't know what to do. I don't know where to start. But now that I've been able to control my emotions a lot more, I still have a panic attack, but it's a lot more controlled. And now it's more of a, excuse my language, it's a clusterfuck of just lines just coming out. It's like this line, this line, this line, this line, and then trying to interconnect them. Like and recently when I was not diagnosed, when I was commissioned by Buzz 16 and BT Sports to write a poem on Mo Farah for Black History Month, I panicked. I was like, it's a huge honor of something of that nature, and to also be asked to perform it at BT Studios, it's a lot. Like an opportunity like this doesn't happen in the poetry scene quite often.
True.
So I felt very honored and privileged to be given that opportunity, and I could feel that weight on my shoulders coming down again. But what I done was I ran myself a bath. I dipped my head under the water. I breathed, and then I just naturally went into it. Like I just watched a couple documentaries, and I stayed calm. Before I would, like I said, have a massive panic attack, and it would be something that I couldn't control. But now it's just breathe. You deserve to be here. You know you're good enough to be here. You're gonna create good work. You have a 2-week deadline. That's fine. You've got a bunch of material that you've already clusterfucked written down. Start there and then work your way up. So that's how it works now.
Okay, but I mean that's your creative process in terms of dealing with panic and anxiety. What I wanted you to sort of touch upon is the creative process is not linear.
No.
And as George has so truthfully and rightly sort of stated, things don't always go to plan.
No.
How do you navigate that? Because there's the issue of regulating emotions, but there's also that thing of like with our condition, when something doesn't quite go the way we want to go, our reactions can be quite unpredictable. And like I find myself having to spend a lot of time and energy being very aware of that, and almost having to sort of put speed brake, like speed bumps on myself, and then go, okay, cool.
It's funny you mentioned that. I've never actually really thought of it. It's funny you mentioned that.
I've been through a lot of therapy, so I've had to pour over like so many things from the past.
For me, I'm a massive perfectionist. If something doesn't, when I'm trying to write a verse, if the words don't taste right, if there's no fluidity in it, I can't release it. It has to be near perfect for me. And what was I going to say? For me, I'm definitely in quality over quantity. So I like to take my time with my work. And if something doesn't go my way, then I'll leave it to the side for a couple months. I won't go anywhere near it. I'll start creating something else, and then I'll come back to it. Because then I'm just going to get really angry at myself. And like being a perfectionist, that's when you question your self-worth. That's when self-esteem starts kicking in. And with the background I have with depression, anxiety, suicide, self-harming even, that will start taking full form, and then that will go into my family, and you're going to be destroying relationships.
Right. So your strategy basically is to park something and to continue creating where you're not obstructed by some kind of impediment.
Yeah. That's one of the things I think is beautiful about being an artist, is that we always have so many different things going on. That we can just throw something to the side and then focus on this, and then I've hit a wall here. Cool, I'm going to focus on this now. Nothing's happening here. Let me go back to this. And one idea will create another idea, and it's a lifestyle for art.
I really want to ask a question, like, because I used to be so obsessed with being a perfectionist myself, but then when it comes down to like you putting stuff aside for a couple of months, do you ever go back to it and be like, why did I underestimate myself? this is actually really fucking good, you know?
Yes, it's funny you mention that, because now that I'm currently finishing up my debut play, there's some aspects of it and from when I started to now, my writing has grown exponentially, and I go back to certain bits and I'm like, this is shit.
Yeah.
Holy hell, what was I thinking? And then I look at other bits, I'm like, that's not good. But I'm now I feel like now I'm getting out of this idea of being a perfectionist. Even though it's still there, I still strive to be great. Even though I know greatness isn't something attainable, it gives me something to strive towards. Yes, it gives me something to strive towards. And I quite like the fact that my debut play is not perfect. And nobody's perfect. It's impossible to be perfect. So it's the imperfect sections of the play that
that's true. Oh.
I'm quite interested in now.
So I want to ask a couple of questions, sort of one for you, Jody, and then one for yourself, George. For yourself, Jody, like what was it that pulled you out of being a perfectionist, or sort of helped you realise to just let go a little bit? Is it just something that's almost organically come through age, or was there a process?
Maturity, knowing that I don't have a lot of time in this world, and I want people to hear my work.
Facts.
Like
yeah,
if I'm like
you just dropped the judo move there, saying that.
Like, there's not a lot of time on this planet. I want people to hear my work. I mean, even if it's like just 100 people, I'm cool with that. But as long as I can inspire one person, I'm happy with that. But in order for that to happen, I need to finish the work. I need to get it out there. Like the play I'm writing at the moment, which I'm finishing off at the moment, it's gone through a transitional phase where I look at the concept and like, it's completely shifted. From when I started writing it to where I am now, I've matured so much that it was originally about this, but it's so much more bigger than that now. I have to keep reminding myself when I'm writing it and I get too far into my own head, I need to keep reminding myself, even though the play is about me, it's not about me. It's about we. The play is focusing on mental health. It's focusing on child trauma. It's focusing on childhood trauma. It's focusing on suicide, depression, anxiety, sexuality. We're all humans. We all face these same emotions, these same themes. So there's something there for everyone. So even though the play is about me, I want other people to connect with it. So in order for me to hurry up and do that, so I can get on to my next play, and I've also got a concept for my third play, I need to just get it done. Like, if you sit on it for too long, someone else will probably think of the idea, and that's where ideas no longer become original. I mean, look at Lin-Manuel Miranda, who wrote Hamilton, an incredible magnum opus of hip-hop magnum opus about American the American forefathers. If he didn't write it, someone else probably could have wrote it. And
I want to touch on that, because there's have you guys heard of the author Elizabeth Gilbert?
No.
Try not to like throw things at me as I remind you where you probably heard her from. So she first came to prominence. She wrote the book that got adapted into the movie Eat, Pray, Love. Yeah, now you all know who she is.
I haven't got a pen to throw at you, but you're good. Don't worry. Like,
I'm a big film buff, but I've never heard of it.
No, she's an author.
it's with the film's got like Julia Roberts. Basically.
Julia Roberts is in the film, but I'm not familiar with the film or the book.
Is it because it's about a woman who takes a trip to Italy? Yeah.
But I did not read that book, for the record. But no, she wrote a book called Big Magic, and it's about creativity. And I think one of the things, like some of the creatives out there who talk about creativity, people like Elizabeth Gilbert, and what was the name of the author who did the book, The War of Art? Stephen Pressfield.
Yeah.
A lot of these artists, they're quite spiritual in how they think about creativity and the muse. Stephen Pressfield talks about the fact that, the muse does not randomly visit artists. The muse prefers and favors artists who put in the work.
Mm-hmm.
And this whole concept that you said about, if I don't write my play, someone else will write it and then put it out there. Elizabeth Gilbert once spoke about the fact that she had this really specific idea for a novel. For whatever reason, she didn't get around to writing it, and then at some point, she tried to sort of bring it out of the drawer, dust it off, and just the magic was gone. She couldn't do it again. And then, just through her travels, she met another artist, as luck would have it, another novelist. And that novelist, the novel that she was working on, not even on a broad level, I'm talking about details, like where it was set, the political backdrop, all of it. It was identical, and she had this belief that creative ideas, they want to be born, they want to be brought into existence, and they're actually agnostic about who's going to be the midwife that brings it into this world. So if the muse sort of taps you, it's a privilege, and you should really you have to grab the ball and run with it.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So I like that, what you said, that attitude and stuff. And I think, again, talking about perfectionism, you touched upon the fact, George, that you're not as much of a perfectionist as before. What I wanted to ask was, has that been influenced by your work in your day job, where you work in a commercial context? And
I mean,
because in a commercial context, if the work is an 8 out of 10, that's good enough to keep a client happy, because people, in commercial context, they want you to complete and to ship work. Spending time obsessing, taking it from an 8 to a 9 or a 9.5 isn't going to make the client any happier. They're not going to pay you more money, and they're not going to be that much more likely to book you.
I think the way I look at it, mainly because of the fact that, because I worked in television for 4 years, so I've worked in an array of roles in TV, from camera to edit producing to QCing, which is quality control. I'm the last person to look over a show, and some of these shows were fucking terrible, really, really bad. I used to work on royalty shows, which were shipped out to America. On Amazon they have a special channel for that, and some of the shows were so bad, and it wasn't something that I would watch. But then it just made me realize is that at the same time, there's still people that watch this. When you think about the aspect of the art, there's still people that watch it. Even if you don't think it's your best shit, someone will still think it's good enough for them. When I think about the aspect of perfectionism, you can spend so much time trying to perfect something, especially when it comes down to photography, with the images I did with, yourself and yourself. I'm not gonna lie, they were paying boys that day.
We're working together on a photo shoot
this weekend. But
Yeah,
the thing is, I could have spent so much time trying to perfect it all, trying to get all the smoothness of the skin. But then if it feels good, it feels good. The question is not whether it's perfect, it's whether it nourishes your soul.
Yes.
That's the main thing. It has to nourish your soul. And when you overthink about it, when you get into that logistical mindset about thinking about the output, it just is the most detrimental thing. And then realizing that some people are releasing content in which you think is, not as good as yours, but they still get likes. It's not, and it's the privilege that you have, that you can actually go forward and then do some stuff, and then just have it released. The moment when it's released, then it becomes an identity. Then it becomes something to be judged. And I think that's the most important part of art.
Yeah. But what about if you're in a commercial context and it's not necessarily about nourishing your soul?
That's different.
And then but you're still dealing with the perfectionist within. Because for me, I'll be honest, one of the things that I've sometimes grappled with when writing for clients is perfectionism. And I've had to realize, even just this week, I had a client send out the most vague email asking for a particular written piece of content. And if I'd handled it the way I would have maybe a couple of years ago, or even at any point in the past, I would have gone to the client and asked a bunch of questions and wanted loads of specificity because I want to make it perfect. Whereas actually I just spent the best part of a day figuring a bunch of stuff out myself, focusing on all the things that I could get done that didn't have dependencies either on the client or the client's client. and then I delivered it and turned it around same day, and needless to say, they're pretty happy. They're not looking for war and peace, or even I don't know.
I mean,
say
it's
the name
a
of famous
tough one.
author.
It really is a tough one, because sometimes with some clients, what you think is not that good is what they think is amazing. Like they think it's and it's exactly what they want. But then you do get other clients who do want you to go further, and you're just like, to be honest, I've done it. Like I've done the job to the specifications of what you required, and now you're asking me to do extra work, which I personally think is actually good. And you're only saying this because you want to have an aspect of creative control. And
So, but then how do you navigate creative partners? Like we've talked about this off camera and off mic before about creative negotiation. Like when you have to sort of deal with other creative collaborators, clients, or I hate using the business word, but stakeholders. Do you feel that that's like, how have you honed that skill so that you can actually navigate those situations?
I think it's the thing is, you have to remove your ego from that whole situation. You can't because there's obviously, we're all creative and we want to have like a sense of like vision of what we want, but at the same time, sometimes someone's ego is going to be bigger, and in a way which you just have to hone in on that. Okay, cool, like, I'm fine with that. All right, tell me what you want, and then treat them in a way of actual respect.
One of the challenges as an artist, and something we haven't touched upon yet, I'd like to hear from everyone here, Jody, George, Meta, and I'll get into it as well. How do you keep the lights on at home, make rent, and keep your fridge stocked with food? Like, how do you do that as an artist?
It hurts me to say this. So to my manager listening, sorry, not sorry, but I do it working in retail. Fucking hate it. Hate retail with a burning passion. Sorry,
Retail sucks.
viewers at home.
You sound like the guy from Clerks. I'm not even meant to be here today.
I'm not. I'm really not. I'm supposed to be on the stage 24/7.
No.
365. Yeah, I work retail. Do part-time, so it's enough for me to be able to balance things out. But I know deep down inside me, as you probably will know, I'm a very ambitious person. Extremely ambitious. I don't want to be working in retail my whole life. I'm happy not being able to perform for the rest of my life. I just want to be able to work in the arts in some way, shape, or form. I know if I work in retail, I'm gonna kill myself. That's jumping to the extreme, but I know me. I can't do it.
It is horrible.
It's
Retail is so
awful.
horrible.
Yeah.
I used to work in a
hated
department
it.
store.
Yeah, you worked in Selfridges, right?
Yeah, I worked in Selfridges.
I briefly worked in.
You worked in Oxford Street as well?
Yeah, man.
I was in John Lewis in Oxford Street, bro.
Bro, I was in Topshop.
Damn.
Yeah.
I
crazy.
briefly worked in Harrods.
Oh,
I was
That's a name
That
drop.
was
No,
like-
no,
that's a name drop.
no, I was a personal shopper. I was a
Oh my god.
temporary
personal
personal shopper at HMV.
Okay.
So my speciality was independent cinema and world cinema. So I was just
Nice.
making
That's a
sure,
good speciality to have,
making
man.
sure
That must have been fun though. Yeah.
it was.
Well, spending other people's money.
Yep.
Yeah, we had personal shoppers in Selfridges, but I was in personal care, which is not a fun place. If you know
Oh.
personal care.
No, what is it? Please
So
elaborate.
basically, I sold women's epilation, men's shavers, massage chairs, and at one point there was like couples massages, which are really vibrators.
Nice.
Mad.
So yeah, I've had all sorts of customers,
All
and I've
sorts of
solved
questions as well.
Yeah. I feel like that's a whole other episode. But yeah, like I've served celebrities. I served the Queen of Spain one time, and yeah, man,
Humble
obviously-
brag.
humble brag. She spent like £15. So yeah,
Cheap,
she
man.
but the thing, she came in the next day and bought the same thing that I sold her for her sister. So
George, if you can touch on, because it seems like
Yeah.
we've all worked in retail.
Yeah.
And Jody's still in retail.
Oh,
Giving his
don't-
shout out to his manager.
Please don't remind
But
me.
like, how have you evolved and pivoted from that? Because I know that you do something completely
The
That's
thing
what
is,
you do.
I feel blessed because I actually can work in like creative work, you know, but it's taken me a long time to get to where I'm at right now, where like, you know, I can work on TV shows, I can do photography, but that's me like honing in so many different skills, man. Like, you know, when I first got a job in TV, like my first job in TV was for London 2012 Olympics, which I was a camera assistant for, like, and I was actually in the Olympic Stadium.
That's a
Damn.
10. But we're
That's
talking
actually sick.
about
Oh, no.
10-year journey.
Yeah, so but
No,
then,
but that's really important for
Yeah.
people to know as well. That's the level you started at. 2012. Tell us where you're at now in 2022, and if you want, you can go in a little bit as to what that arc looked like.
I mean, because it's the luck of it, you know, part of it is luck and part of it is fundamentally connections that you make, you know, because, you know, if I didn't work on certain films that I did at uni, I wouldn't have got the connections in ITV or ITN. And then from them connections, because, you know, I worked in sport, I was able to work in other additional sport. And then from them connections, based on me working as an edit assistant, I was able to work as an editor. And then I was able to work as QC. So everything becomes like transferable skills. Because the next step I'm going to go into now, because I don't like post-production. I love editing, don't get me wrong, I can do it and I get paid for it, which is nice. But at the same time, I prefer production. I prefer producing my own stuff. That's why I ended up like, you know, during the pandemic and just before the pandemic, started to diversify my skills by starting to direct music videos and get paid for that, you know, and then because of everything I've done previously. So they see me in my showreel and then they know what I can do, you know, they know I have a lot of flexibilities in terms of the skills that I have, because with them, they're not just getting like a camera operator, they're getting a director, you know, they're getting the first AD, they're getting someone who's has the professional experience in like understanding the entire post-production phase.
Yeah, they're getting your versatility.
Yeah, which is, but that's a lot of work to get to that level. You know, there's a lot of work that you have to do and the connections that you have to build, because first time I ever did a music video, like I didn't understand what the fuck I was doing. Like, you know, trying to direct people is difficult. So for me, like in terms of trying to keep the lights on, it's now about expanding that network that I have and having them consistent clients coming through, which next year I'm blessed where like February's all booked up and I've got like another client potentially with an e-commerce company, and then I want to diversify that because it's to do with clothing. I've never done clothing before, but then they're interested in doing it because they've seen some of my work and they think I can do it based on that. So
if you're in need of a model,
yeah, definitely Haroon.
No, Haroon cuts a very, very good silhouette. If you see the trailer that I'm dropping,
I could see that, man. But the thing is, yeah, good face though, isn't it? Like strong beard.
yeah, good jawline.
Very good.
He is actually the goddamn sugar, you know. He's
brown sugar.
I'm in a
I'm
very
white chocolate.
healthy.
Brown sugar.
I'm in a
Damn,
very
we got
healthy,
D'Angelo in this place.
committed,
Yeah, of
monogamous,
course,
exclusive
but I mean,
relationship.
if you look like Haroon's got a really like the beard game is strong. Like, he's got sick hair. Like obviously, you know, he's got everything as well.
I'm looking forward to photographing him.
Yeah,
and then you got Jody's
you got-
cheekbones.
Yeah, like Jody, I can see him on posters like for JD and stuff like.
JD.
You know what? I could actually.
Fucking JD, not
or
Prada.
like Davidoff.
And how about yourself, Metaforecast?
It's
How have you
nice.
transitioned from the world of department stores and
I'm just going to quickly throw this out now. I'm very envious of you three that you
Nah,
don't
man.
have to work those jobs anymore.
I'm sometimes I come close to like applying for stuff though.
Don't do it, man. Don't do it. Believe in yourself. Please
Cool.
don't do it.
So basically, like, so as I think Haroon and some of you guys know, like I was in Selfridges for the longest time. So I was on the shop floor for about maybe 5 years, and then I went from the shop floor to the office. I was working in 2D production and graphics for the graphics department in Selfridges. So I was organizing sale winter, summer. Like I'm like a couple sales deep. So I think I've done four or five sales, not even more, like maybe just under 8 sales with Selfridges, and coordinating sale from London to Birmingham to Manchester. So I used to do that, but then I got to a point I think around 2018 where like it was just crushing my soul, like microaggressions, all that stuff. Before the whole George Floyd thing, I didn't have a name for it, for what I was experiencing in office. So decided to quit. I tried to be a copywriter. I left my job there to do email marketing for 2 months in Harrow on the Hill. It was all right. It wasn't for me though. To my friend, because it was my friend's parents' company, it just wasn't for me. And I just wanted to, I kind of knew like 1 month in, and I just stuck it out one more month because the pay was really good.
What was it paying?
It was well, yeah, it was like 25. It was 25k, and I came from like 23, so it was like £2,000 more. But after tax, it's about the same. You're getting like £20 more, something like that, or whatever. So I left, and then I was unemployed. I did go back to retail like for like a year, like not even a year, like 10 or 8 or 12 months, and I was working in Spitalfields for Hackett. And funnily enough, on the day I was being made redundant, because basically the Hackett store I was working at was going to close in December before going into 2020. My old manager from Selfridges and my other friend from Selfridges came in that same day. So it was kind of like a sign. It's like, and they kind of reminded me that I wasn't supposed to be there, like I was supposed to do other stuff. So when that shut down, I became unemployed, and then I was living on my savings until the pandemic hit. And then I literally just signed up for UC just before the pandemic became a thing. But by that time, I went to BYOB for like two events as an audience member. And then the poets I kind of followed from those 2 events were doing stuff online, shared my poetry, then built a following online. And then when BYOB came back from lockdown, started performing. And then from there, tried out the poetry thing just because I wasn't doing anything. I was unemployed. And then this year I became a self-employed person. Officially started 2 companies, the Metaforecast and Poetry and Chips, and then working as a creative, just basically getting jobs within the poetry scene, but also with your help, Haroon, I've branched out doing client work for corporates. I was not to name names, and then obviously branching out doing music videos, and just doing like even social media content. So yeah, it's been up and down. Some months are more dead than others, but anything that I earn goes back into my business. Nice. And if you know, like when you start your own business, like the first 5 years, any money that you make, it just goes back in. So you're not really making anything, but it pays off in the end, because most people I know that run their own business are really successful because they just keep investing in themselves. And there's some months where I made more than I ever did when I was in a full-time office job. Anyone that's on it, if you start now and just keep investing in yourself, and then you'll realize like, this is actually worth your while.
How about you, Haroon?
Yes, for myself, I mean, I left retail long behind, thankfully, in my 20s. There was a whole period where I wasn't creative or doing stuff just because I was leading a different life. Like I was married, and I went and I did my master's, went to business school, and I worked in sort of startups for about 10 years. But I think for me, my creative inclinations just snapped right back into place at the beginning of 2017. Basically, my marriage ended. I walked away from my marriage and started rediscovering all these creative parts of me. But I'd say that the years that followed, apart from the obvious challenges of trying to negotiate a divorce, because generally they're not very amicable, and me and my ex have a child together, and that also adds another dimension to it. But I think I definitely found an anxious time being creative and working in sometimes quite stressful and toxic office jobs where you're not happy, and it's if you're doing the wrong thing with your time. Because I think ultimately one of the messages I want to get out is that if you're an artist, you're going to have some form of day job. Either that, or you've got a skill that you can freelance in and have your own business, but you can't get away from that fact. I was at the Ultimate Music Seminar, which is run by a guy called Kwame, who used to be a keyboard player in a famous British R&B group in the 90s called The Influence. and two of his business partners, apologies, I can't remember their names, but it's him and sort of two women who run the Ultimate Music Seminar. And the Ultimate Music Seminar was, was there to sort of teach people about different sides of the music business, whether you want to be an independent or you want to go with a major. And the one common thread with everyone there was, understand that you need a day job.
Mm-hmm.
You need a day job. For some, that's a full-time job. For some, they've got 3 or 4 part-time things. Some people are sort of freelance.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for me, I struggle with that balance. So, because it was so stressful working office jobs, I worked a couple of office jobs during 2017 through to 18. And when when the second one, the latter job that I was in, when they went bankrupt because they were a VC-backed firm, burnt through all their cash, I went and did the most brain-dead job that I could do. Actually, I don't want to say it in that way, in a derogatory way, but basically I wanted something where I wasn't having to deal with office politics. I wasn't having to deal with a lot of the things that happen in startups, like a lot of unpaid hours, because it's a startup. You need to hustle to make it work.
And you get stocks and shares based on the startups as well.
Yeah, but I've worked in so many startups. Nothing's ever. I mean, you're working for a lottery ticket, and I think that was another learning curve.
Waiting for that unicorn
that never turns up. So I went and I delivered pizzas for ages, and then I went and I worked at another office job for some really lovely people, actually. But I think by the time I did that job, it really did dawn upon me that offices were not a great environment for me, that I definitely had ADHD and autism. This was just before the pandemic. And I quit that job, but I'm actually very grateful for that job because it laid some seeds for me. So my actual title was supposed to be an operations manager, which just meant that whatever jobs were needed to be done for the day-to-day running of the company, I needed to do that. So that meant, project managing clients, etc.
It sounds like you was a utility man then.
I was a Swiss Army knife because ultimately I've always been a bit of a generalist and not really a specialist at something, and that's hurt me a lot, at least in the past. And there's arguments to be made about, we're living in a world where actually depth isn't as important and range. I don't want to. That's another podcast to discuss what's right and what's wrong. And I don't think there's one set answer, because I think you can be successful as a specialist and as someone who sort of goes broader rather than deep. But within that job, my boss basically, just in an offhand conversation, I talked to her about the fact that, I used to be a student journalist, I used to write, And she's like, really? Hold that thought for a second. And what happened was that basically they had to create heaps of content at the company for their product in order to make it nice to use for their end user. And that meant just all sorts of things, blogs, quizzes, a lot of stuff that required thinking and content. And a lot of it they were outsourcing to places like India, simply because it's cheap and you can do it at scale. But the problem was that last mile of actually getting something to sound well, to read well. And so the time that I was there, I just spent a lot of my time really more as a content manager. When I left there, did a few bits and pieces that are not worth mentioning, like work-wise. And then, I think during the pandemic, I trained up as a copywriter. I studied, took a course. It was hard finding work during the pandemic, and I'm not going to lie, I won't go into how much or how little work I got, but it was a grind. And I think for me, I'm in my sort of third year of it. This has probably been my best year in that I've got a really cool retainer client. I've had people commission me for some projects, which, I've had, there's certain challenges and complications. I think Meta was involved in one of those projects with me. And I think, for me, I realized that while I'm not necessarily making the level of money that I did when I was employed by other people, my sort of day rate is valued way higher than when I was a salaried employee. So for me, it's just more about finding more work of the right caliber. And I've seen a lot of people in my field who've been doing it even for less time, who just even in the first year, they've been upping their rates like steadily throughout the year. So I think, yeah, for me, the way that I'm looking to keep the lights on as an artist is to basically just double down as like a creative freelancer, because I think I wanted to be a journalist when I was younger. And then I looked at how little money they make. You can actually probably make more money in fast food than as a entry-level journalist.
Yep.
And to be honest, even then, I'm not sure how much money there was even before the internet came and stole everyone's lunch. And I think, you know, for me, when I got into copyright, I was just like, wow, no one told me that you can just get paid to write stuff. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's very commercially driven. You know, I've got mentors who've taught me that, look, the client's the client. You've got to let go. If they tell you they want to do it a certain way, even if everything you've been taught in your craft can make them all, you just got to listen to them.
As long as they're happy, that's the thing with clients. As long
Yeah.
as they're happy with what you're giving them, because sometimes the client is right, and you have to. It's horrible as it is,
Yeah.
man,
Well,
but
they're-
they're the ones paying you.
Yeah,
you
they're
know?
the ones. But what's interesting is with my very first client, I had to compromise massively. They didn't listen to me about what I think was good copywriting, and what's interesting is they've stayed because we've had a great relationship, and over time they've actually come back to me and sort of said, that style you're talking about, we want you to rewrite our stuff in that style. And unsurprisingly, it's because they've seen a competitor do it in that style, and now they want it, as opposed to not necessarily understanding, you know, the merits of what gets done in my craft. But either way, I think as an artist, whether you can find a job that you're maybe not happy with, but a job that you can do. I don't even want to use the word tolerate.
I was thinking tolerate.
Yeah, but you know, find something. Just find ways, because I think I really question the whole starving artist myth. I think it's an incredibly toxic myth, and you know, people like Akala have spoken out on this as well. I actually think that, yeah, don't get me wrong, whether you're doing creative stuff in a commercial context or whether you're doing it for yourself as an artist, you know, there are times where, you know, there is anxiety, there is stress, and it can potentially create good work. But day in, day out, you're not going to make good work or be able to create stuff from a position of weakness and anxiety if you're not paying your rent on time and just able to basically get 3 square meals in you. And I think that's something that when we're taught this model, this kind of Hollywood venture capitalist or whatever model of, you know, making it. And I think artists need to understand that actually the ways in which you can sustain yourself and make money, especially in the 21st century with the internet, and I don't know much about this, but when I was at the music seminar, they were talking about things like NFTs and how certain people, you know, they're not Stormzy level rich or Adele level, but you know, some of those people are actually doing better than a lot of people in the room just through understanding things like blockchain, NFT. But yeah, I think as artists, you know, figure out what your way is going to be to basically consistently earn money. Because again, unless you're getting signed by a label, you're going to end up having to fund things like studio time.
Yeah.
Like my first book I'm working on, I'm self-publishing that. That's going to take money. You know, I know that with podcasting, where me and Metaforecast sort of individually are creating podcasts, those are basically digital assets, you know, as a 21st century creative.
Yeah.
That, again, requires money.
And that's also a reinvestment back into yourself in terms of what Meta was talking about, in terms of trying to invest into yourself and into your content. And one thing I'm interested in when it comes down to that whole aspect of the myth of the starving artist is that there's a lot of pride with some people who do want to be the starving artist. They believe that they should struggle, but it's just like whatever job you take is actually getting you through. That's the main thing. It alleviates you in your... Because the thing is, you can have financial freedom to basically make the decisions. Like, if you have financial freedom, you don't have to be rich, but as long as you can get by it, then it just makes you a lot more comfortable with understanding how much money you're basically putting into your art and how much money you put in expenses.
And you
so on and so
balance
forth.
it, because, you know, if you go and decide you're going to go be an investment banker, you probably won't have time for art. You do need time.
Yeah.
But at the same time, people who don't want to get a job and say, I need more time to make my art, I think people also forget that time is a creative constraint, and actually having less time is your friend.
But it's also good to get the balance right, I reckon, in terms of because you can be the artist. I mean, I think we've all had conversations about this in terms of like going into the open mic scene and having that kind of like hunger to almost like go to every single night and do it from there. But to some people, it could be their detriment. You know, I know people who was made redundant because of their jobs, because they were focusing too much on the scene. And at the same time, there has to be the perfect balance, because you can't just, you need the friendship, you know, outside of the scene. You need, like, even as an artist, you know, you need to be able to have pockets of spaces that you can basically go to and then feel nourished by. Because if you're always trying to strive towards something, towards art, unless you're in like, you know, some crazy mindset where you can almost, you know, when people get into that hyper focus mindset.
Yeah, we know, because we're like, autistic and ADHD, so that's
I'm undiagnosed, so like, yeah, for me, ADHD, but it's that kind of thing. People go into that hyper focus mindset and they can achieve a lot through that, and they think that's sustainable as well, which
it's not.
It's not.
That's
Unfortunate
good.
reality is that it isn't.
I think one last thing I want to touch on before we get booted out by our hosts, where we're renting out the studio space from. First of all, I want to thank everyone here for, you know, their contributions and speaking so candidly and generously. You know, Jody, you touched upon certain things, were very sort of vulnerable. Some great insights from yourself, George. If everyone wants to just talk quickly about any upcoming projects, things that they want to sort of plug, if you can do it just really quick and concisely.
2023 coming up. I plan on finishing my debut play. It was entitled Divulge Evolve, but it's now changed to Warrior, because it's about us. It's a play about mental health.
Okay.
That, and watch the space.
Social plug.
Just Instagram. I don't like social media much, but Instagram @_JOD.Y. That's.
Is it .y?
.y.
Okay, it is.
So underscore.
Shows I'm not paying attention.
Yeah, thanks.
No.
It's
Just
cool.
it auto completes and just takes.
Right, yeah. So @_JOD.Y Instagram. There's a picture of me on a chair looking quite sexy.
I don't know how to beat that.
And
Sexy person in the
incredibly
chair.
modest.
Yeah.
George.
So next year, oh my god, we're finally in completion phase of this documentary I've been filming for like 2 years, which I am so gassed about. I think it's going to be absolutely amazing. And yeah, running events for Word of Mouth next year. We're going to do it seasonally. So the first one's on March the 23rd. So follow that on Word of Mouth. On Instagram, wordofmouth.london, or follow me. And if you like me, follow me if you hate me, which is G Lawrence Poet on Instagram as well.
Wow, I got so much going on. 2020,
Make it quick.
2023, Window to the Spirits, Omnibus Theatre, Clapham Common, first Sunday of the month. So that's the 8th of Jan, 5th of Feb, 5th of March, and 2nd of April. Surprise announcements, headliner for the last event on the 2nd of April. And I'll have some guest hosts such as Tunai, Odd Socks, and Haroon as well. And yeah, and then also features from Killer and Shani, who'll be selling their books at my event too. So yeah, and also open mic will be 10 minutes. So
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Sorry. That's
Say
so
what?
generous. Yeah.
10-minute open mic
10-minute
slots.
open
How many open micers are there?
I'm aiming for 15.
What?
on a night.
What?
Yeah, so it'll be
That
like
is
5, then break, then
insane.
5, then break,
Bro.
and then 5.
Yo,
I-
love to you for that one.
Yeah, I needed a
But you
unique USP.
but you realize that's like 3 hours of open mic.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
That's-
That's gonna be mad. Yeah, no, because basically, like coming into Jan, right? I was like, are people gonna come? Because it's after Christmas. Like people broke. I was like, what can I make? What would entice someone to come out? And you know, poets love to just get their shit off. You know.
Yeah.
So I was like, give them 10 minutes. A meaty 10 minutes. Like it's almost
Okay.
a set.
Man,
Some-
you're like the Oprah of poetry. Man. You get 10
You get 10
minutes.
minutes. You get 10 minutes.
Yeah. So oh yeah, obviously SEO is strong. Instagram and YouTube at the Metaforest. That's the metaphor with a PH and then add EST at the end. Website coming soon. All that stuff. So,
I love how good you are at plugging yourself.
you got to. If you
He
don't plug
rehearses it in the
yourself.
mirror.
Yeah, man. I was, it's because it was just hard to spell. So I was like, how am I going to make this make sense? So the metaphor, everyone knows how to spell it. It's one word. Then add an EST at the end. So that's my tag. So yeah. And
Cool.
yourself?
In terms of what I'm working on, my first poetry collection, I'm looking to self-publish that, put it out in 2023. So that's what you can look forward to. Speak Easy with Haroon, the podcast. You're going to see a lot more of that. Again, I would say just go to my Instagram at Haroon Creates, HAROON Creates. There'll be a lot more details about the podcast there because I still haven't set up the socials and sorted some of the things out for that. But yeah, in 2023, the main things to sort of look out for me is the book and the podcast. I mean, I'll still be sort of working away behind closed doors, making beats. We'll see what that leads to in 2023.
Wow, looks like we got a good year next year, boys.